Hello, YouTube. I'm back once again to talk shit about Vaush, specifically about Vaush's incredibly bizarre take on monogamy. Now, I get the feeling that a lot of Vaush fans are wondering why I feel the need to target Vaush specifically, and I think that is a question worth answering. To put it simply, I think that Vaush represents everything that is wrong with the modern left. Vaush is really good at abusing rhetoric to make himself look morally superior, when in reality, he's putting forth an argument that is inconsistent with science and the objective world. But of course, leftists don't care about the objective world. They figured out that if you can make yourself look morally superior, if you can manipulate people's empathy, and if you're really good at bullshitting, you can change people's minds without even needing your positions to be based in science at all. And that's the problem I have with Vaush and pretty much all of the internet's sociology types. They seem to have forgotten that human beings are products of evolution, and that as products of evolution, we have some inbuilt tendencies and inclinations that act on us in ways that we can't always control. And that's why I feel like this take needs to be criticized, because Vaush really needs to be brought back down to earth on this issue. So I'm going to start by playing some clips of Vaush talking completely out of his ass about a subject that he knows nothing about. And then I'm going to show you all of the scientific evidence that contradicts what he is saying. Let's begin.
Nah bro, I've lived the casual lifestyle and it sucks compared to the spiritual intimacy of sharing your body with someone you love. They're incompatible.
Well, raining trees, do you think that your preferences here might be, like, specific to you? I do despise the arrogance of people who because they only want to their soulmate or whatever, think that means it's best for everyone. I personally, I think that, like, non-monogamy is the default state of humans and our adherence to monogamy is socially destructive. But I'm still okay with you motherfuckers doing what makes you happy. When we're talking about, like, what people should do with regards to sex or relationships, I think that it's not necessarily fallacious to talk about what human beings seem designed to do. Especially since a lot of people's arguments in favor of monogamy is the idea that that's the way you create a child. But that is absolutely not the case. You create a child by fucking. Anyone can fuck. Monogamy has nothing to do with it. We raise children in monogamous relationships now, but that's a social construct that is not that old. We used to raise them communally. So I don't think that there's a natural argument in favor of monogamy.
So let's start with this really strange claim that non-monogamy is the default state of human beings. And I'm going to show you just how easily and how quickly I can find a scientific article that contradicts what Vaush is saying. So let's Google monogamy across cultures. And obviously I've Googled this already, otherwise I wouldn't be using this as an example. And let's see, the very first article, Are We Monogamous? A review of the evolution of pair bonding. And I'm just going to read from the abstract of this. If you want to read the whole thing, you can go ahead and do that. Let's see. Despite a long history of study, consensus on a human typical mating system remains elusive. While a simple classification would be useful for cross-species comparisons, monogamous, polyandrous, and polygynous marriage systems exist across contemporary human societies. Moreover, sexual relationships occur outside of or in tandem with marriage, resulting in most societies exhibiting multiple kinds of marriage and mating relationships. While challenging to characterize, our review of the literature offers several key insights. Number one, although polygyny is socially sanctioned in most societies, monogamy is the dominant marriage type within any one group cross-culturally. Interesting. Number two, sex outside of marriage occurs across societies, yet human extra-pair paternity rates are relatively low when compared to those of socially monogamous birds and mammals. Number three, though the timing of the evolution of certain anatomical characteristics is open to debate, human levels of sexual dimorphism, now there's a word right there, and relative testes size point to a divergent history of sexual selection from our great ape relatives. Thus, we conclude that while there are many ethnographic examples of variation across human societies in terms of marriage patterns, extramarital affairs, the stability of relationships, and the ways in which fathers invest, the pair bond is a ubiquitous feature of human mating relationships. This may be expressed through polygyny and or polyandry, but is most commonly observed in the form of serial monogamy. Vaush. So, right off the bat, this paper admits that serial monogamy is the most common human relationship pattern. Not a great start for you, Vaush. So, while monogamy is not the only form of human sexual relationship, one could argue that monogamy is something that humans are predisposed toward. And I'm sure that Vosh will want you to believe that this is a matter of socialization. I can imagine him saying that if we just taught our children to be more chill about open relationships, then monogamy wouldn't be so common. But that argument is also incorrect because there are several evolutionary factors that influence us as humans to form monogamous relationships. One of those factors is pair bonding. Humans as a species develop pair bonds, and these bonds are influenced by hormones. Reading from another scientific study, pair bonding is an evolved trait and may play a critical role in reproduction, as well as in individual and species survival. The neurobiology of pair bonding or other forms of social affiliation are most readily understood in this context. The proximate mechanisms underlying various forms of positive social behaviors, including pair bonding and maternal infant behavior, rely on common neural and endocrine systems. At the heart of pair bonding are neural systems dependent on peptides, including oxytocin, vasopressin, opioids, CRF, and related hormones. Steroid hormones, although not directly essential for pair bonding, may facilitate and modulate these behaviors. Neuropeptides also serve to coordinate the autonomic and endocrine consequences of positive social experiences with behavioral states that support the formation and maintenance of social bonds. So, the fact that humans developed pair bonds, which are largely influenced by hormones, means that humans have at least one strong evolutionary drive that pushes us toward monogamy. And this isn't the only evolutionary factor to consider. Let's also look at the phenomenon of mate guarding. Long term committed mating is a fundamental strategy in the human repertoire. Successful enactment of this strategy requires solving two related adaptive problems: fending off potential mate poachers and preventing a mate from defecting. Mate guarding adaptations evolved to solve these persistent problems. Those who failed in mate guarding risked suffering substantial reproductive costs ranging from genetic cuckoldry to reputational damage to the entire loss of a mate. Because the precise nature of the adaptive problems confronted different because the precise nature of the adaptive problems confronted differed historically for the sexes. Men and women evolved corresponding differences in the underlying psychology of mate guarding. Men's mate guarding, relative to that of women's, is strongly triggered as a consequence to being mated to young and physically attractive women. Damn, ain't that the truth? Being confronted by interested rivals who have superior economic resources of prospects, and having a mate who displays signs of sexual involvement with a rival. Women's mate guarding, relative to that of men's, is triggered as a consequence of being mated to men high in income and status striving, rivals who are more physically attractive, and having a partner who shows signs of emotional involvement with another woman. Behavioral output of mate guarding adaptations range from vigilance to violence. And obviously, these behaviors are not exhibited by everybody. There are certainly some people who either consciously or innately do not develop pair bonds or experience sexual jealousy. However, humans as a species display these behaviors, which other animals also display. And the central point I'm making here is that if you claim to believe in evolution, then you have to consider that some of these behaviors, namely sexual jealousy, are artifacts of our evolutionary history, and thus not something we should really judge people for. Think about it for a second. Why do humans feel jealousy? From a practical standpoint, jealousy is a completely useless emotion that we could certainly do without. The fact that humans feel jealousy is best explained through a sort of evolutionarily driven self-interestedness. This is why Vaush's explanation that jealousy is born from insecurity is such a weak take. It's a really surface level understanding of humans as evolved organisms. He is ascribing fault to a condition that lurks within our subconscious, something that the average person isn't going to have a lot of control over. And on a larger note, this is my gripe with Vaush and other sociology types in general. I've noticed that sociologists don't seem to factor evolution into their understanding of human interactions at all. That is modern sociology's biggest weak point. Too many of their advocates fail to consider the fact that humans are products of evolution, and we have some subconscious motivations that we are not in control of. So, on the off chance that Vaush sees this, and I do think he will, I gotta ask, Vaush, do you believe in evolution? Because the way you talk about human behavior suggests to me that you have never once considered what being an evolved creature implies for human beings. We are not blank slates. We do still have vestiges of our animal ancestry. Most of our feelings and behaviors are affected by subconscious processes that we have no control over. And you can't just reduce all of that to insecurity. That is a high school level understanding of human nature. And you can do better than that, Vaush. I know you can. And I can already hear your community gremlins furiously typing, "That's biological essentialism." Yes, we are products of evolution. We are nothing more than really smart animals. We have instincts and drives that are mostly out of our control. And there are aspects of our nature that are biologically essentialist. Fucking deal with it. You can't just cry biological essentialism at every aspect of human nature that you don't like. Grow the fuck up. Read some Piaget or some Jung. Or maybe turn on some Jordan Peterson lectures on personality. You might learn something. But for the sake of honesty, let's refer back to the first study that I referenced and take a look at the societies that did not adhere strictly to monogamy and see what they were like. Maybe by comparing our society to theirs, we can get a better understanding of why monogamy dominated in some areas and not in others. While humans form long-term pair bonds that are recognized as marriages in all societies, sexual relations also occur outside of marriage. In some societies, these relations are clandestine and considered transgressions with punishments that range in severity. But in other cases, uncommitted sexual liaisons are socially permissible and generally fall under two well-documented ethnographic contexts. The first occurs prior to first marriage when adolescent girls are in a life stage when they have a low probability of conceiving and are given freedom to explore different premarital relationships. For example, among the Makushi of Guyana, recently sexual mature individuals receive parental support to engage in premarital sex. So moving on. The stated purpose of this mating behavior is to allow for mutual mate choice and the identification of a possible long-term mate. However, once married, copulation outside of the pair bond is expected to cease. Interesting. A second socially sanctioned form of sex outside of marriage occurs in the context of either paritable paternity or wife sharing during prescribed situations. For example, among some lowland South American groups, women regularly have several sexual partners in addition to their husband. This practice is common where the contribution of multiple men is thought to be required for fetal development. Okay. While women do not formalize additional relationships through marriage, these men are expected to provide protection for an investment in children as they develop, a long-term commitment. In other societies, wife sharing may occur during publicly acknowledged situations. A well-described example comes from many different ethnographic sources of the Inuit, where monogamous couples engage in wife swapping. This exchange was reportedly agreed upon by all parties and often, though not always, resulted in long-term social and sexual relationships. Other extra pair relationships are more clandestine, likely because of penalties that may follow, e.g., violence in response to sexual jealousy. Interesting. Nonetheless, there are many examples of men offering food and other resources in exchange for extramarital sex. So, when it comes to societies that practice non-monogamy, you've got one, societies where adolescent girls are encouraged to have sex, and I think we can agree that that is no bueno. Two, you have a society where women literally believe that they needed to sleep with multiple men to have a healthy baby. That is disgusting, but also hilarious. And three, societies where men would swap wives with other men in exchange for resources or favors. That is also hilarious if you're a misogynist. Now, Vaush, I'm sure I don't have to go into detail about why each of these societies are problematic. I mean, at least I hope I don't have to go into detail about it. You understand why those are problematic, right? And in all of these non-monogamous societies, sexual jealousy was still a factor, and a lot of extramarital relations were kept hush-hush. So the big problem with non-monogamous relationships is sexual jealousy, and you can't socialize jealousy out of people. So, pair bonding and sexual jealousy are both massive roadblocks to having a polyamorous society, because pair bonding urges people to stay together, and sexual jealousy can very easily lead to violence. Those are two evolutionarily driven behaviors that are more compatible with monogamy than non-monogamy. And factoring these two elements into the picture of human nature makes it much easier to argue that humans as a species would tend towards monogamy. And that lines up perfectly with the fact that monogamy is the dominant form of human relationship across cultures. So it's not the case that the default state of humans is monogamy, but rather our evolutionary drives push us in that direction. Now, I could stop the video right here because I think I've already made a strong enough argument, but I was doing a little bit more reading about how pair bonding forms at a neurochemical level, and I found some information that might be relevant to Vaush specifically. This last part may shed some light on why Vaush's perspective on monogamy was so out of line with virtually everyone else's. Let me explain. Scientists strongly believe that the hormones oxytocin and vasopressin both play a major role in human social behaviors and pair bonding. And they also suspect that variations in the genes associated with these two hormones play a role in autism spectrum disorders. I'm going to read for you an excerpt from a much larger study titled The Neuroendocrinology of the Social Brain. Recently, genetic studies found a contribution of a vasopressin receptor subtype AVPR-1A in social behavior. The length of this promoter region was associated with altruistic behavior. The amount of money allocated to an anonymous partner in an economic game was higher for participants with long expressions of this gene compared to short repeats. Several studies have previously shown an association between this gene and autism, as well as partner preference in the male prairie vole. Interestingly, the association between this gene and pair bonding has also been observed in humans. The RS3 repeat polymorphism significantly predicted outcome measures in the partner bonding scale in men, while this association was not found for women. In addition, one specific allele was important for quality of the marital relationship. Carriers of the 344 allele reported lower marital quality and had more often experienced marital crisis or threat of divorce during the last year. Wives of the 344 allele carriers reported lower marital satisfaction. These results shift the attention towards the involvement of AVPR1-A polymorphisms in social disorders. Altogether, central AVP seems to have similar influences on social communication processes in humans, as is the case in numerous other vertebrates. Moreover, the effects of AVP seem to be sex-specific, promoting agonistic and affiliative types of responses towards same-sex faces in men and women, respectively. The AVPR1-A gene seems to be associated with differences in altruistic or pro-social behavior in men and women, and with pair bonding and marital satisfaction in men. So, what I'm getting at here is that maybe the reason that Vaush thinks that monogamy is socially destructive is literally because he's autistic. And I'm not saying that to be mean. Vaush has openly admitted that he is autistic, and you can very easily find it on YouTube.
For the autism thing, I haven't talked with my parents about this in like fucking 20 years, but apparently the gist of it was that a doctor was like, hey, yeah, your boy's got autism for sure, but if I officially diagnose him, there's going to be a push for him to be put in a special school. And my parents didn't want me going to a special school because they wanted me to go to a regular-ass school, so that one just kind of got left on the table. But, yeah, you know, we got the early confirmation on the science matchup, so...
It just doesn't seem like coincidence to me that Vaush has a wildly divergent opinion on monogamy from the rest of the general public, and he has autism, which scientists think may have something to do with genes associated with pair bonding. I might be reaching, but this is definitely an evidence-based argument backed by science, so I think it's a fair point to consider. So, Vaush, maybe you should consider that your experience of humanity is considerably different from the average person's, and because of that, you should not use your experience of the world to make conclusions about humanity as a whole. You should think about that, Vaush, and maybe you should also read the articles that I have referenced throughout this video. Educate yourself, as they say. And then maybe you can come up with a better perspective on monogamy, one that is informed by biology. Because this take here...
You know what? I'm just going to be a little bit more clear, okay? A lot of people's interest in monogamy is insecurity. There, I said it, okay? If you have a girlfriend and you don't mind her hanging out with male friends, but you do mind them, her fucking those friends, that is a completely arbitrary standard that you've set up, and vice versa. If she has a problem with you fucking other chicks, but doesn't have a problem with you talking with them, that's completely arbitrary. 100% arbitrary.
Is what Jordan Peterson would call low-resolution thinking. Until next time. Hey, if you like that video and you want me to make more videos where I call out Vaush and other leftists for their bad takes, then you know what you gotta do. Like and subscribe, leave a comment. If you have some strong feelings about anything that I said, then feel free to let me know in the comments. I read everything and I might even respond. Hit your boy up. Subscribe to the channel. You know what to do. Holla at me.